What's up, my fellow lionesses and lions? Welcome to the Project Lioness podcast, where we are here to disrupt the mainstream narrative when it comes to health, holism, and human consciousness. We are here to share bold truths about health and life from a female perspective. This episode is brought to you by our team, Inspire Co., where we stand for your health being inspired by choice rather than being inhibited by chance. Thank you for being here and joining in on these raw, real, and powerful conversations. We hope our show brings you inspiration and empowerment to overcome challenges, reclaim your life, and ultimately pursue your mission with power, purpose, and play. Now, let's get into the episode. Welcome back, everyone, to the Project Lioness podcast. This is Dr. Mel, your host, and today I am joined by an amazing, beautiful, empowering woman, Liz. And before we get into her journey of healing, I'm going to share a little bit more about what she's up to on the planet and what she's all about. So Liz is a passionate advocate for health and wellness. She specializes in services for seniors. Thank goodness we need people like that. She has 11 years of experience working as an occupational therapy assistant in transitional care settings, and before changing focus and working in sales and marketing focus on housing for seniors, which is very important, like I said. So recently, she's expanded her expertise, which I love, in health coaching certification and food as medicine certification, allowing her to focus on holistic wellness, which you all know we talk about on this podcast. She has a special interest in women's health, and that has been shaped by her personal journey with hormone imbalance and endometriosis, which we'll talk all about today. And this experience drives her commitment to empowering others to take charge of their health and well-being. When she's not working, she loves spending time in nature, hiking, gardening. She brings us amazing vegetables and things as gifts in the office, which I love. And unwinding by the water. So she firmly believes that a balanced lifestyle is crucial for overall health. So welcome to the podcast, Liz.
Thank you so much for having me.
So welcome. So we said a couple words in there and things in there. I'm just going to put this down, y'all. Hold on. So endometriosis, and I know you're more than just a label, and we're going to talk about that. But one of the reasons why I wanted to bring you on is because your journey of healing, not just that, but really your holistic life, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, relationally, has been very inspiring. And I would love for you to share some of that today, because Project Lioness is all about bold, raw, real truths and healing in life. So take us back, as someone who's experienced the endo and other things in life, take us back all the way to kind of that first wake up call.
Yeah. So, when I was a teenager, I had painful periods off and on. I can remember one time barely making it back to my house, leaving work in a lot of pain. And then there would be years where it would just be kind of normal, what they call normal periods, or, with the cramps. But probably about 10 years ago, I started to just really struggle. And I knew there was something wrong with my body because I was exercising a lot and trying to eat healthier, and I was going gluten-free, and I just continued to have these terrible cramps. So I went to my OBGYN and talked with her, and they ran some tests and essentially said, I don't know what to tell you. Everything looks fine. Maybe you should try counseling.
Oh boy. Interesting.
So, which counseling has been an important part of my journey. So while I felt like I was a little gaslighted, it still was been beneficial to me. So I am grateful that she suggested that. I spent some years in counseling, continued to try to lose weight and just educate myself a little bit more, and continued to have really painful periods. I was doing direct care in healthcare, and it was to the point of where I was starting helping people shower, and I would start to faint from the pain. Wow. So it felt like I wasn't safe for myself or others.
Yeah.
And so
what was if I could pause you briefly, Liz, what was because I work with a lot of women, and I know a lot of women listen to this podcast who have had similar experiences with brushing off, oh, that's normal, or you have to deal with it. what was like the physical experience like for you? Because I know for me, we share a very similar journey. Like for me, at times it was literally like a knife was like digging in my uterus. And I know this can be maybe extreme, but I think it's important for people to understand that it's not just like a pain. It's like very, very different.
No, it would be to the point of where I would be like laying on the couch with a heat pack, maxed out on ibuprofen and Tylenol, and I would use peppermint oil, and I would still be like soaking through my clothes, sweating from pain and just shaking.
Wow.
To the point of where like Isaac or my spouse would just sit and just be like, I don't know how to help you.
Yeah.
And there would be points where I would start to black out. And then of course I would have, I don't know that everybody's familiar with this phrase, but I'd have like the period flu leading up to it, where I would like feel like I was running a fever, body aches, chills. And then like, even like my thought, like I couldn't think well during my period. So not only was it like the severe, crazy pain, but it was just all encompassing.
Yeah. Yeah. Your whole being is like taken over.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it was for weeks, leading up to it, the week of it. And then it's like I can remember feeling like I survived again this one. Like, I know that sounds really dramatic, but literally being like proud, like I made it through it.
Yep. And now I'm going to enjoy this next 28 days or however long. And
And sometimes even like a couple days after my period, I would start getting cramps again and spotting. So there really wasn't a whole lot of relief.
Yeah. So I thank you for painting the picture. I know sometimes that's intense to relive, but I think for our audience to get and resonate with that, like, holy smokes, you're not alone. And it's important to know that like, it's not just pain we're talking about. It's a whole nervous system, body, mind, spirit experience that really takes you out of life. And you're almost kind of just gripping until the next period. Like, okay, please, or like, even if it still continues, like, please don't happen this intense again.
And then the anxiety of like knowing that it's coming and leading up to it. And what is it going to be like?
Yep.
It plays a whole like it's like a mental game, and like, it has its own mental toll on you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm curious, so let's fast forward. Yep. So you did some counseling, whatever, going through that experience. What was like the next, or keep guiding us through the journey? What was the next kind of wake up call or thing you chose to?
Yeah. So every time I would be due for a pap smear, I'd go in and I would tell them like, something's not right. And so then they'd tell me like, well, we could do exploratory surgery. So let me know if you'd like to do that, or you can go on birth control. Mm-hmm. And neither one of those things resonated with me. Mm-hmm. Just having some medical background, I understand, what surgeries can be like. And there are women out there that is the right choice for them. Totally. And I respect that, but it doesn't resonate for me. Yep. And birth control, the times that I was on it off and on in my life, I didn't feel good on it. Yeah. And I just kept thinking in the back of my head, like, our body likes to be in homeostasis. It wants to be. It's designed to be. Mm-hmm. So how can I help my body get back to that? Because the body heals itself. Mm-hmm. I just need to figure out the tools and kind of like the prescription of how to do that.
Yeah, the ingredients.
Yep. Thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate you speaking to, knowing what your values were. And we always say like Project Lioness, there's no judgment of those things. And it's important to know your values of like, do I want to go through the hormonal cascade that birth control creates, or do I want to potentially deal with the consequences of surgery? And me being a doctor, I try to advocate for that for my clients. Like, hey, I'm not here to judge what you choose. I just want you to know the outcome. Like, there's consequences to every choice we make, even going the more quote unquote holistic route. Like, it takes time, it takes resources, it takes money, it takes energy. And it's kind of like the hard, easy, or the easy, hard. Right. Not that every single choice you make holistically has to be hard, or everything you choose that feels easy. There's going to be something hard, but there's this concept of cause and effect. Yep. So fast forward, I know when you and I first connected, this was a year ago. I wonder did we look up the actual date?
We did. It was October like 16th or something like that, I think.
It's been a little over a year celebration. And I remember sitting in the back room doing the consult with you, And you're like, I have literally done everything.
Yes.
And I hear that so freaking often. I was like, Liz, you haven't done this, but that's
right. I hadn't done this. I didn't know this was a thing.
Right. And I say that confidently, but humbly, because I often know all the things that people have tried.
Yep.
And I'm like, listen, I get it. I understand that maybe this is just going to be another thing you try and you're going to end up in the same spot, but you've got to trust me and you've got to trust yourself.
Yep.
So you came in, started care. It's been a year. So this is not to negate also you're doing other stuff.
Yep.
She does a lot of stuff. She's definitely a healer over here, can teach y'all some things or 2 or 5. But you started care, and what did you start to notice as we continued with like your cycles and, you know, paint the picture of like you're in this journey now with me at Inspire Life. What was that like? At
the point I came to you, you know, I felt like I had tried everything. Mm-hmm. I was in pain every day. And I just felt somewhat hopeless. Like deep down, I knew that like there had to be the right mixture of everything. Like I knew I could still do it, but it was starting to be very disheartening.
Yeah.
And so, you know, once we started, I started like pretty quickly to feel more balanced just in like my mental stability, like in my emotions. And then I started to have decrease in just my daily pain because I was always having that right upper quadrant pain, which they felt like was from my understanding from the doctors, they felt like it was from the weight of the endometrioma that I had on my right ovary. Yeah. And so that's kind of where it started. And then, you know, I was in a place where I planned nothing around I was not willing to leave the house around my period. It was nothing
on the couch.
Nothing. Yes.
Canceled life plans.
Canceled life. Yeah. And 4 or 5 days before and after it was supposed to start, because you never knew if it was going to start right on time. Right. So you got to be my whole life was planned around it.
Yep.
And, you know, within a couple months, they started to be a little bit more manageable. I think it was April. I came for the immersion, and it was the first time. We started in October, and in April was the first time that I was able to leave the house and function on my first day of my period.
Yep.
It was still touch and go, but it was...
But you did it. Y'all, she came to the immersion. I just want to echo that. Like, and you're like, even before you're like, I'm supposed to get my period. I'm like, okay, what if it doesn't have to be as hard as we think it's going to be? Like, what if you could rewrite the story? And you're like, yeah, I'm open to that. And you came with your stuff.
Backpack.
If y'all haven't been to the mental emotional immersion, like we go into shit. Like we do work. And Liz actually helped me out that day. So you're not only learning, like you were working. And that was a celebration of like, okay, I got my period and I made it through. It wasn't butterflies and rainbows, but you made it through and you were able to live your life, and learning I know is important to you. It's a high value, and you were able to be in your values. And there's a reason I'm speaking to this, but you were able to live your life and not have it completely take you out of things you love doing.
Yes.
And there is something, we're not saying like, what I'm speaking to y'all is not saying like you need to be on all the time. Like I am definitely an advocate for chilling when you're on your period, right? But it can also be a slightly more pleasurable experience.
Yes.
It doesn't have to be doom and gloom all the time.
Yes. Listening to your body. Mm-hmm. But now, you know, like I was able to go to the state fair on my first day of my period. I never would have dreamed of ever doing that, you know, a year ago or for many years of my life.
You went on the state fair when you had your period.
Yep. Which is
you ate some good food.
No, but I functioned, and it wasn't like, you know, cause I was the person that was, you know, living with a heat pack on her, like a portable heat pack, and like all of the creams and all of the medicine and everything. And, you know, every once in a while I would have a good period, and I'd be like, what did I do different this month? Yeah. Like you would rack your brain, you know? But definitely, I'm definitely able to function so much more. I don't have everyday pain anymore. Is life all sunshines and roses all the time? My endo is still there. I've been able to get imagery, an MRI, and actually, I have met some other really great women in this last year that are medical professionals that have really helped to what is the word? Like to support me and make me feel validated, that have gone to those extra steps to say, yes, you have endometriomas, that demonstrates the severity of the endometriosis, and giving me options and empowering me. And I don't feel like I had that in the years leading up to this year. Yeah. It's been a long journey.
Yeah, I know. And we'll go into some of the things I know we focused on in care here. And I know like your system has shifted, but are you open to sharing what happened to one of the endometriomas?
Yeah, of course.
Which is some of you have seen me share this a little bit, but care to share there at all?
So it was
kind of cool.
It was 3 centimeters and it shrunk by 1 centimeter. So
pretty significant.
And they told me, one of the professionals told me that they don't shrink. Yep. Like they just kind of are. They can burst, but they don't usually shrink and resolve. Yep. So my one did shrink. I did grow a second one on the other side.
Just balancing
out life.
Balancing out.
Yep. But my symptoms are telling me that things are getting better.
Yeah. I remember you shared that. I was like, whoa. Because that's something us chiropractors geek out about, is when you shift the nervous system state, the tissues that the nerves control also have the potential. It can take time, but I'll never forget you sending me that. I was like, dude, that is so cool. Like just celebrating you. And sure, your body's starting to kind of change tissue in other ways, but it's definitely leading to more balance versus just one side of you taking on all the energy versus like, okay, let's balance this out. And there's still tissue changes to be had. But what if we could keep perceiving it as like your body is working?
Yep.
Your body is moving in the right direction and balancing things out. And it doesn't have to live in this like, well, once, a tumor or cysts or whatever y'all maybe deal with in your own body, once it's there, it never happens. And it's like neuroplasticity and healing tells us differently. It can change if you have the right ingredients, and sometimes it's the right ingredients in the right order.
Yep. Right. So I do castor oil packs pretty frequently. I've been very careful about my diet. Yep. But that's, I guess, one thing to share is like when I started coming to you, I was so systematic and robotic in my life of like being so careful about anything that I ate, how much I exercised or didn't exercise, what kind of exercise, like environmental things. Like I felt like I was living my whole life around it to try to affect how my month would be. Yep. And since coming here, I've been able to let loose and let go of some of that, which I think has been liberating all on its own.
Yep. It's that freedom of, and I've said this on other podcasts, like, yeah, it's great to do all these health strategies and it's great to have less inflammatory foods. And it's also like, what if you could be so neurologically flexible that you could start to live your life, meaning maybe there are some days you have red wine, or there are some days you have fried food, or you go off of that regimen because you've created this stability and coherence in your own values where you can have some of that metabolic flexibility, essentially.
Because otherwise it was just like, I don't know, it just felt like you were always the no person. No, I can't have that. It might make me feel bad, or no, I can't do that. Or it just felt like life was so limiting in an effort to make life not limiting so I didn't have so much pain. It was like this double-edged sword or a cycle that I just didn't know how to break out of.
Yeah. It's interesting how that works, right? It's like, hey, I'm doing all these things so that I could actually try to like avoid this, but you're actually creating, it's an interesting paradox, right? Yep. So anything more you want to add on the like tissues healing? So I'm going to go into like kind of some things we started to focus on in care.
I don't think so.
Yeah. I love that. So as we started kind of going into stuff, and some of you who have experienced network spinal and working with me know that it's beyond the physical. And there's often mental, emotional patterns that will reveal themselves through our tissue to get us to wake up.
Yeah.
And are you okay with me sharing like some of the sound stuff we did?
Of course.
So one of the things I've noticed and that I've learned over the years is oftentimes tissues that form as like, whether it is your uterus or your ovaries or anywhere else, the fibrous tissue, whether it's like tumor-like or cysts or fibroids or whatever, often deals with suppressed resentment and anger. And when we suppress that, even from when we were younger or our teenage years, our body has to do something with that energy. And I'm just teaching you all, because we're going to go into what Liz and I actually worked on a lot, and perhaps it may inspire you to start to tap into this, even without me being with y'all. But when we suppress those things, the energy has to go somewhere. Yep. It doesn't just disappear. Those emotions have to be digested and processed. And if we don't integrate it, it becomes the tissues, right? The issues become and show up in the tissues. And that's an intelligent response, y'all. So that's your body's intelligence of dealing with the energy and information in the moment when you don't feel like you have the capacity to adapt and respond. Okay, so this is kind of my trauma resolution teaching 101. And so as we can't handle those quote unquote wounds, it becomes wound in our body, in the connective tissue and tissue, right? So as I started working with Liz, I asked practice members, are you open to the fact that there may be something here from a past experience? Or are you open to the fact that you may have some undigested emotion? Because it's not just adjusting the spine, see you later. It's unwinding these wounds. Mm-hmm. And of course, Liz was like, yeah, I think you were kind of open, but I was like, so are you open to making some sound? This was like the first kind of couple sessions in, maybe a couple weeks. And I was like, are you open to making some sound? Like, are you open to screaming? Because here's what I know.
Good memory on that.
Oh yeah, I remember all my people's things. Amazing, I sleep at night. No, I'm just kidding. But, and it was very like visceral for me because I've worked through my own version of that. And I remember like looking at you, I was like, here's what you're going to do. You don't need to do it in the office right now, but I want you to scream. Because I could tell, based on our conversations and even just language and jaw and all this stuff, there's some undigested and metabolized anger and rage and resentment. And she's nodding her head. She's giving me permission to share this.
Absolutely.
Like, what if instead of like playing the good girl, what if you just fucking screamed? And so I'll have you continue, but what was that like?
So I was like, oh, screaming, that'll be fine. And then I was like, okay, whatever. And then I got in my car and I couldn't scream.
Yeah.
I could not freaking do it. So I came back and I was like, I can't do it. Like, this is the stupidest.
I'm laughing because eventually she got to it, but I'm laughing at
I got
story.
To it. Yeah. Stupidest damn thing ever. There's I should be able to scream.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it made me kind of angry that I just but I could not. So I started out with these little things.
Yep. We titrated it. Titrated it.
And then the first time and it was always my thing after I came here, because I was coming here 2 days a week. Mm-hmm. It was always my thing on the way home that I'd give it my best shot. So I remember the first, and to circle back a little bit, for those out there, like I've always felt like I have this like block in my throat. Yep. Like I haven't had a voice a lot of my life.
So I'm piecing together the puzzle for y'all because I know a lot of chiropractors listen to this and they don't always look at these things. That was one thing I was noticing. It was like, okay, you have this thing.
Yep.
And from embryology, the way the fetus uncurls is the tissues here, if you guys are watching on YouTube, the tissues here reflect and mirror the tissues up here. So that gave me an indicator. I'm like, I think there's a throat uterus thing or a throat, women's organs thing happening here that is calling for reconciliation.
And even in counseling, we used to like the talk counseling, we would work on like trying to shrink this to get my thoughts and my words out. Yeah. So it's been a long-standing thing for me. Yeah. But how many adults scream that often? So I just didn't think about it. Anyway, so I remember the first day that I screamed because I screamed and then I thought I was going to puke and then I burst into tears, just sobbing. Oh my God, I can't believe it.
Yep. I remember when you came in, you're like, I got nauseous.
So nauseous.
And then I started crying and I was like, great, do it again. And to piggyback on what Liz is saying, for you practitioners or people like, well, why does that happen? So when we make sound is the most primitive way of communicating and moving energy. Think of when you were a baby, you maybe don't remember, but your parents might, or you've been around babies, they use sound. That's all they use. It's a form of communication, but it's the most primitive. And so as we do that, we actually create vibration in our body of tissues that have been locked in freeze mode, essentially, or fight or flight. And so when we make sound, some of you may be familiar with like vooing and vagus nerve tone and all of that. Screaming is just a part of that, but at a higher frequency. And so what I was noticing in Liz's experience was her experience was so intense, we needed to match that intensity in order to override the system, which comes with feeling safe in someone's, care, to be able to go to that edge of intensity to match what your body was screaming at you. It was just wanting to complete that loop, essentially. So just, again, I might teach as Liz talks to help bridge these gaps for you guys.
And I think our culture, and as women, we're taught to be quiet and be good. And even, I've even at our funerals, we're taught to cry quietly, where like you look at other cultures and people are moaning and they're crying and they're, like laying on the casket, like they're actually expressing their emotions.
Yes.
And we're taught to just put it all back in, sit there, dab your eyes, and just, and so I feel like it's something that is just reinforced in so many different places in your life that you don't even always recognize that you're just slowly shoving everything back in.
Yep. Until
you scream.
Doesn't fit.
Yeah. Until it doesn't fit anymore. And your body starts to scream because you haven't resolved those emotions.
Yeah. Well said. So we started making sound.
Some
of you, if you're a client of mine, you're like, yeah, Mel's made sound with me on the table. And I'm curious, as we started moving through care, I know you started to have kind of some awarenesses as your body started to shift its frequency. You started to have some awarenesses of some like, oh, this I noticed connects to this, or I noticed this pattern kind of started here, as far as maybe those past relationships, if that's anything you want to share, of like where you maybe felt when those moments of like suppression happened.
Yeah, I definitely took a deeper look at my childhood, past romantic relationships, current relationships in my life, and just started to kind of put some of those pieces together in places of maybe where I wasn't being authentic to myself or true to myself and really expressing my feelings. And sometimes I think one of the biggest things I've realized is sometimes I've been so used to putting those things down that I don't really necessarily know what those real emotions are.
Right.
And so that's part of my current journey, is really exploring, what is my soul really telling me? And giving that space, and what is my body really telling me, and actually honoring it versus just being like, that's not convenient, or that's not the story I want. And so we're going to override you because I think, I've definitely learned that you can only override your body and your emotions for so long.
Mm-hmm. And then the whisper becomes the scream.
The whisper becomes a scream.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Well said. So for someone who is maybe has been in that space like you, felt like they've tried everything, what would you share with them as far as, not necessarily that they need to come here, but what do you feel like would be a good first step, or even something they can start? Because I know you've done a lot and you've got some expertise on your own disciplines. Per se, but what's kind of some initial feedback you would share with them?
The first thing I would share or encourage is I would make sure that you surround or find people in your life, whether they're professionals or friends, or those people in your life that are going to support you and not second guess you, that are actually going to support the journey, even if they don't get it.
Yeah.
For me, I was blessed to find you, and I have a couple other health professionals that it just kind of all fell into place, that I finally feel like I'm empowered and not, gaslit to it's in your head, or that's just what women how women feel when they have their periods.
Like shit for the rest of your life.
And I can share with you that other women have also been some of the biggest gaslighters.
Yeah, true, man.
Women professionals, medical professionals, unfortunately.
Why do you think that is? If we just go on a tangent for a second.
Yeah.
Why do you think that is on a deeper level?
Well, I think that
I have my theories, but I'm curious your theories.
You know, for me, I think that we know that there's something there. We have been brainwashed somewhat by pharma. And I think that women
Don't cancel us, Spotify.
Sorry.
It's okay. You can say it. It's the Project Lioness podcast. You can say it.
And I think other women, maybe this sounds crazy, but I think other women sometimes get fatigued by knowing a truth and not having an answer to it and hearing it over and over again, that they then are just like, yep, I'm done with this. I can't do anything about it. They feel helpless in their own right. That's kind of some of my feeling on it.
So they maybe project, like they maybe have felt lost and hopeless, but they don't have an answer. So that comes out as like, I don't know how to deal with this case.
Yep.
So that's how it is.
Yep. And we know that there is way less, medical studies done on women. Yes. There is women's pain is taken much less seriously. I mean, think about some of the procedures that they have us women go through. That is, there's no pain meds for it, but men get like pain meds for a vasectomy, you know, like,
for sure.
So
I think that's a solid answer. I would agree with you. I think if we haven't gone I'll let you finish and then I'll share my perspective.
I think I'm good.
Complete.
Yeah. I think
this is like, I'm going to go into podcast number 2. I 100% agree with you. I've had clients, where they've had similar experiences with other chiropractors, honestly, which kind of, irritates me a little bit, where they're like, well, there's nothing I can do. So you might as well get used to living this way. Like I've literally had clients say that from a chiropractor. And I was like, this is maybe my opinion. And that's fine because it's my podcast and you can unsubscribe if you don't like it. But I was like, you could fire that person if you wanted to, because they are literally speaking against what all the research is showing is neuroplasticity. Like the body can heal. It absolutely 100% can. And, average of 3 to 5% of cases are genetic. And how much of that they actually know is genetic could be epigenetics, meaning what we see.
Turn it on or off too.
Yes, you can turn on and off these genes, and what we think is genetic. Like, sure, are there very interesting physical things that show up in our DNA over the eons that we've been humans? Absolutely. But a lot of it, they're like, maybe more of this is epigenetic than we think. They find that root experiences or trauma goes back decades. Like it didn't start with you. I recommend that book. It's a great book. But some of these things that we're talking about, who knows when this started?
Right.
It could have been mom. It could have been grandma. It could have been great grandma. It could have been, so if you guys haven't read It Didn't Start With You, it is a fantastic book that we can trace epigenetic tags from, I think it's 60 years back now.
I believe it.
Which is pretty damn cool. We used to not be able to do that. But to your point, my piggyback on that is I feel like, and this is not a judgment towards other female practitioners, but I feel like if they haven't gone to the depths of their own experience and in their own suffering, because it's scary or they avoid it or they feel as though their professional expertise is being challenged, it can often be just very easy to stop and just be like, well, I don't know what to do. And they're unwilling to explore the depth of something that maybe goes outside the algorithm of the textbooks that we get, or outside of the algorithms of the educational system, because it doesn't fit in this box. Or like, well, I'm doing all the things I was taught in school. I think one of the things that has allowed me to become a master practitioner is like, I'm willing to bend the rules. Nowhere in my chiropractic schooling did I learn to have your client scream.
Right.
I never learned that in school. And I'm not saying that the schools are bad, but if you're a practitioner or a healer listening to this, be willing to stretch the edges, because that's where like the magic starts to happen. Yeah. And it doesn't mean you're unethical. It doesn't mean that you're, doing bad things, but be willing to and open, like, what if it were different than what I learned in school? Like, I think some of the best healers on the planet are people who were willing to stretch the edges of the 3D, essentially. That's a whole nother topic.
I would go to like OBGYNs and I would start to talk about some of these other things that I was learning. And it always seemed like they were scared to even have those conversations because then, would they then get in trouble for recommending something that's not, the traditional form of medicine?
Or you can't bill it to insurance? Yep. Sorry.
I mean, honestly, I felt like I ran into so much, I would just felt like I kept running into brick walls. Like they wouldn't even entertain. Well, and they'd say, well, I don't know anything about that. All I know is that you can try birth control. If that doesn't work, we can do surgery.
Yeah.
And what a disheartening thing to be told that you should just take pills or just have surgery.
Yep.
And endometriosis is extremely under-researched. They still don't even know what causes it. There's multiple theories behind it. And then there's some that say that it's an autoimmune disorder, some that say it's from retro, bleeding, so basically that when you're shedding your lining, that some of that blood doesn't come out. And so then it creates, there's just so many different ideas out there about what it is. It just would be such a beautiful world if everybody could work together in the natural path and the general, OBGYN, in those spaces to really come up with something more comprehensive because it really does need to be a holistic approach.
It does.
It's crazy that we have created a health system where we will only look at one part of our body because our whole body works together.
Yep. You can't make an impact on one system without impacting the entire holism of the structure.
Exactly.
And, there's some models out there that are outdated, but I have hope. I have hope because of people like you. I think you just speaking that, even if one person in that model listens to this and they go in on Monday and they're like, you know what? I'm going to ask a different question here. I'm going to go outside of this textbook that I've learned, and I'm just going to be open to the fact that maybe there's more here than just physical causes.
Yep.
Maybe because, you can't deny that we have emotions. And maybe you're listening to this and you're having your own emotional experience, right? So I appreciate you speaking to that because I know that can be sometimes a sensitive topic, but I think it needs to be talked about where there's people's lives. And in my opinion, there's people's lives at stake. And
Absolutely.
If you just stay in your bubble and you stay in your box, I also want to be conscious of the fact that as practitioners, if you feel like you've exhausted so many things, it's easy to get fatigue. Yep. When you feel like you're losing hope because you feel like you've tried everything. And I would allow that frustration to be a catalyst to expanding your consciousness as a practitioner, because it's the hardest cases, for me at least, that I've felt like, man, I feel like I should be making more progress, or maybe I'm underestimating the amount of time in the holistic way. Those are the moments for me that has stretched me as a practitioner, that's helped me grow to get the results that I help people get. I'm not getting the results. You're getting the results. Your body's doing the work.
It's a partnership though.
Yes.
Really.
Thank you for saying that.
That's why it's important to find a practitioner that resonates with you, in all areas, because it really is a partnership, and that's when you're going to get your best gains.
It's true. You got to have, I think that's, equally important. You got to have that connection with the person who's caring for your body, at least in this type of chiropractic. Like, it's very intimate. I'm not sitting across like this, like my hands are on your guys' bodies, right? So I appreciate you saying that.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to share, Liz, with someone, who may be in this journey, or any nuggets of hope or wisdom?
I guess I would just share, looking at, it's been very beneficial for me to look at it from a nutrition standpoint, from an exercise standpoint, from an emotional standpoint, to really address all of those pieces, and just know that there is a right combination out there. It's easy. You can feel hopeless, and it's understandable to feel hopeless. But there is an opportunity to heal. Your body wants to heal itself. And it's just finding really that right combination.
Yeah. I would even add in there, I think what you and I are beginning to explore is the soul plane.
Yes.
So don't, And it doesn't mean you have to be religious, y'all. But the soul, spiritual level, if you feel like you've done all the physical stuff, there might be something deeper in there to start to explore.
And honestly, I feel like I have just cracked the very beginning of things. And, I'm here for it because that's what life is about, is like becoming the best person that you can be on the earth. But, it's you have to be willing to dig deep, and it's uncomfortable at times.
Yeah.
And there's hard things that come that you just, but as long as you listen to your inner self, and if it continues to guide you and tell you that, deep down you're on the right path, it's important to listen to that.
I love that. Thank you for sharing.
Of course.
All right, y'all. Well, you heard it from Liz here first. Super grateful, and just to, share my gratitude for you. Thank you for just being as you are, and thank you for trusting me. And I'm on my period right now, so I might get emotional, but it is truly an honor to hold space for you, knowing that you have tried and done so much, and I do not take that lightly.
I really appreciate you and just your guidance. And like I said, it feels like a partnership, and that's even more important, is to feel like you have a voice, especially coming from me when I haven't felt like I've had a voice a lot. So I thank you so much.
You're so welcome. And that's why I invited you on this podcast, just to have a space to use your voice and allow this whole 42 minutes almost to be healing for you.
Thank you.
All right, y'all, we're going to go hug it out and cry it out. If you yourself are struggling with something related to your women's health, or even any form of health, or someone who you feel like has gone through the gamut and feels that hopelessness, please reach out. Please share this podcast, even if it's they listen to it and they have a little ounce of hope that maybe steers them in the direction. It doesn't have to be with me. You guys know you can reach out to me if you're not in Minnesota. I know this podcast is global. So please reach out. We're here to guide you, and we'll include, I know Liz is kind of on social media here and there. I won't bombard her with messages, but maybe we'll put your Instagram or something in the show notes so you can reach out to us. So with that, we're going to close out. Thank you for tuning in. This is the Project Lioness podcast. As always, peace, love, keep inspiring. Bye. Thank you for joining the Project Lioness podcast. Did you find value in today's episode? Help us impact the lives of others by sharing this podcast with someone you know who would resonate and benefit from the Project Lioness message. Excited to hear more? We invite you to subscribe on whatever platform you're tuning in on. And we'd be so grateful for you to leave us a review about what you enjoy most, as well as what you'd like to hear more of. Thank you so much for all of your support. Sincerely yours in power, purpose, and play. Dr. Mel with the Project Lioness podcast. Keep rising, keep roaring, and keep inspiring.